Get your tools ready, get your torque wrenches ready, get your safety gear ready. Today, we are going to install the Bilstein struts for this 2014 Toyota Tundra. And before I forget, don't forget to grab a buddy. This is definitely going to be a two-person job. All right, let's get this truck up in the air, get the front wheels dismounted. Don't forget to chock the rear wheels. I like to do it with the curb and some wheel chocks. All right, guys, I got this up in the air. As you can see, I already got the Bilsteins on. I am literally only going to show you where I mounted the jack stands. I forgot to do that previously. But I placed the jack on that far cross brace. There's another one a little bit closer, but I have this shield right here and I didn't want to remove it. So I just went a little bit further back. And then on the front part of the A-arm, on the back side, that's where I placed my jack stands on both sides. I took everything apart because I need to retorque everything. I need to go around, torque all my components, and then I'll take it to the alignment shop. After that, get some new rubbers, and I'm good to go. First, we're going to remove the disc brake assembly using a 3/8 drive wrench with a 10 millimeter, 12 millimeter, and a 17 millimeter socket. I used a 1/2 inch impact with a 17 millimeter socket to help me out. We will then need a combination of either 3/8 drive or 1/2 inch drive, 14 millimeter or 15 millimeter socket to remove the shock top bolts. Don't remove the center one. Then a 1 1/16 socket to remove the tie rod end. And for the lower shock bolt, you're going to need two 22 millimeter sockets. For the upper ball joint to the steering knuckle, you're going to need a 21 millimeter socket. I started by removing the top 3 nuts off the strut tower using either a 14 or a 15 millimeter socket. Then I removed the 10 and 12 millimeter bolts to loosen up the brake line. From there, I removed the two 17 millimeter bolts off the back of the brake caliper. If you guys noticed on the tools picture, I had a clothes hanger. I grabbed that clothes hanger, looped it around the brake caliper, and on the upper control arm to hold everything in place. Right now is a good time to remove the lower shock nut. Leave the bolt in place using two 22 millimeter sockets. You could also go ahead and take off that tie rod, and I used a 1 1/16 socket. You might have a different size socket, so just beware of that. Remove the upper ball joint from the steering knuckle using a 21 millimeter socket. Remove the lower shock bolt and pry the strut out. If you've been following along, you know that I've already done the drop. So we are going to be taking the old strut apart, reusing part of the drop kit. I had to reorder these sleeves right here because the Bilstein has a different outer diameter. So whenever you receive these Bilsteins, you're gonna receive them with this sleeve right here. You're gonna have to remove this boot. And that's one thing that I really like about the Bilsteins. You'll see that I don't have a boot here because I had to tear it off. There was really no other way of getting it off. There was really no other way of getting it off. So I tore these boots off. Let's see, let's take this off. You'll take this piece off. You'll slide this sleeve in here. We need to get this silver bracket right here, or this silver component, and also add it to this sleeve. Here we are going to begin compressing the spring with the spring compressors designed for struts. This part, it looks like I'm using an impact, but I'm really just shortening the length of the bar so I could do everything by hand. I recommend doing it all by hand. things can go south real quick. Just hammering with the impact, this is one of those places where slower is faster. Once the spring is loose, remove the center nut. All right, let's take this assembly out. Slowly, carefully. Get this bracket out. Slide it in the new strut. As so, let's put the boot in there. And we need the washer to go as if it were a bowl, so that if you were to have water, you'd want it to puddle, but obviously that's not what we're going for. All right, again, this bracket is directional. So we want it to say out, facing the outside of the truck. So let's make sure, don't forget the coil. All right, let's place this inside. I almost forgot the main thing. That'd have been funny. Like that. Let's place this side up. Let's go ahead and take these nuts off. Put this so that the out is going upwards to match that. Let's just double check. At this point, we are reassembling the strut. Bilstein does a great job of putting a diagram of how to install all the bushings. I did a poor job, so I'm just doing this little voiceover of explaining how to install the strut tower, but it's really simple. Just look at the diagram and yeah, carefully reinstall everything. Make sure that the top of the strut tower is aligned properly to the outside. You will be able to wiggle things around. It might be a little tough if you misalign, but just make sure that whenever you install the strut tower, or I'm sorry, the strut into the strut tower, the outside is facing outside, or those bolt holes won't really align. Once those are up there, go ahead and put a few nuts on there just to hold it in place, and then you can rotate the strut to make sure that it aligns properly to the lower control arm. To install the assembled strut, loosely install the 14-15mm nuts on the top of the strut tower. Use your foot to lower the lower control arm as much as possible and shove the strut in. Install the lower strut bolt, but don't tighten or torque. Next, connect the tie rod end and the upper ball joint. I like to use the jack as a third hand to help lift the lower control arm and get everything closer so I can hand tighten and then get everything torqued. Moving on to the brakes, install the rotor, caliper assembly, and lines. For 2015 and earlier, torque caliper bolts to 73 foot-pounds, and for 2016 and later, torque them to 133 foot-pounds. Finally, snug up all the bolts and then hit them up with the torque wrench. Upper shock nuts are torqued to 21 foot-pounds for 2013 and earlier, 33 foot-pounds for 2014 and later. Lower shock bolt gets torqued at 144 foot-pounds, upper ball joint at 81 foot-pounds, and tie rods at 51 foot-pounds. Now that everything is installed, torqued, we need to run the truck and pump the brakes. Since we removed the brakes, there might be a chance that the brake pads aren't touching the rotor. So just give it a couple of pumps, make sure everything feels good. Go take your truck out for a drive, listen for any abnormal noises. If you hear something, bring it back, check it out. The most common thing for me is the rotor cover. I tend to bend that for some reason, and I just got to bend it back. If you don't hear any noises, drive it for around 30 to 60 miles and just make sure you take some lefts, make sure you take some rights, just wiggle it a little bit and bring it back and retorque it. It's really important to retorque it. You will feel a couple nuts or bolts come a little bit loose. So retorque it and then go take it to the alignment shop. Really important. Get it aligned and then you're all set. If this really helped you guys out, please hit that like button for me, subscribe, let me know what other content you might want. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See ya.